Hello and welcome to our next video, topic 4.4 of AP Chemistry's curriculum, physical and chemical changes. So this is a pretty basic concept that you've probably learned many times, but let's just go over it and then talk about one little complication that AP decided to throw into the objectives. Physical and chemical changes can be differentiated by whether bonds are broken and formed or whether they're not in the transformation of a substance. So when we talk about a physical change, we're talking about some change in the characteristics of a substance that doesn't actually change what the substance is. In other words, the substance remains the exact same substance. For instance, if we had some water molecules, and these water molecules were attracted to each other through their hydrogen bonds, so we have an attraction between these molecules through their hydrogen bonds, and we added some heat and disrupted those hydrogen bonds between the two water molecules. So we heated it up and that hydrogen bond was broken. We would still have water molecules. These would be the exact same substance. And so by breaking intermolecular forces and having a phase change, we did not change what the substance is. And so a phase change is a physical change because the substance is identical before and after the change. If I froze the water and it became ice, it would still be water molecules. We just formed more hydrogen bonds between the water molecules, but they are still water molecules. So the substance stays exactly the same. However, if we break the bonds between hydrogen and oxygen so that we ended up with, let's say, a hydroxide ion or an OH molecule, if that could exist, and an H atom. So if these were broken apart from one another, then all of a sudden we no longer have water molecules. The substance is completely different. And that would be a chemical change. As soon as you break the bond inside a molecule and change the molecules into different things, you no longer have a physical change, you have a chemical change. So physical changes are all about changing the form of a substance, but it's still the same substance. Chemical changes are all about breaking bonds and making completely new substances. So all chemical reactions, of course, are chemical changes. Any phase change would be a physical change. If I cut a piece of paper in half, that would be a physical change because it's still paper. The molecules are exactly the same. We've just disrupted the attractions between the molecules. So what is that complication I was talking about that AP is thrown in? Well, if you look at the objectives for this curriculum, you'll notice that it says that if you dissolve sodium chloride, into water, I don't know what that is. If you dissolve sodium chloride into water or any other ionic compound into water, technically, when you do that, the sodium ions and the chloride ions dissociate from one another and get attracted to the water molecule. In this dissociation process, technically, you are breaking the ionic bond between the sodium ion and the chloride ion. And so their argument is that there could be an argument that dissolving ionic compounds into water and making dipole ion attractions could be a chemical change because you have broken a chemical bond. The argument against that would be that if we just boil the water off of salt water, if we take the water and boil it off, the sodium and the chloride just go right back to attracting one another and forming the ionic bond between the sodium and chloride ions, once again making the ionic compound. So typically we think of dissolving as a physical process because the sodium and chloride ions are still sodium and chloride ions. Sodium still has lost an electron, chloride has still gained an electron. They're just attracted to different things. And we can easily get the sodium and chloride ions back together by evaporating the water off and they reattract one another to make the ionic compound. So typically we think of this as a physical change, dissolving ionic compounds into water, but they're saying that technically there could be an argument made that it's a chemical change because you're breaking the ionic bond in the ionic compound. I don't really know why they do that. I think they just want you to understand what chemical and physical changes mean and why they're not necessarily as clear-cut because you could make an argument from the definitions that dissolving ionic compounds is chemical. So if you really understand what chemical and physical change mean, then it's easy to start seeing those gray areas. And that's true with almost everything. If you start understanding how things work or what things mean, you start seeing those gray areas in chemistry. And I think that's one of the things that AP chemistry is all about, is realizing everything is not as cut and dry as you learned in your first year chemistry course. Anyway, I hope that was a little helpful. Not a whole lot here, but just wanted to give you a heads up. I hope you have a great day. Bye.